Zixal shook with fear inside the small maintenance closet on Harmony 7 space station. The dim emergency lights cast strange shadows across his blue skin. His 4 eyes darted back and forth, checking for any signs of danger. The young alien scientist pressed himself into the corner between cleaning supplies and repair tools. This hiding spot stank of chemicals, but it was safe for now. Just breathe, he whispered to himself, though his 3 hearts all raced too fast. Focus. With trembling hands, Zixal pulled out a small device he had built from spare parts. This communicator could send messages without the station's security noticing. He had worked on it for 3 nights straight, afraid to sleep. The Vorlax might find him if he stayed in one place too long. Zixal looked at the tiny screen and pressed the red button. "This is Zixal of Lyria," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am sending this message on all emergency channels. Please help me. The Vorlax delegation has stolen my research data. They want me to lie about my findings so they can take over more planets. When I refused, they threatened to kill me." His voice cracked as he continued. "I've tried talking to the council leaders, but no one will stand against the Vorlax. They're too powerful, too rich. I have nowhere to go, no one to turn to. If someone can hear this, please help me." Zixal ended the transmission and slumped against the wall. The glowing tips of his fingers dimmed as his energy dropped. The antenna on top of his head drooped low. Who would help a nobody scientist from a small, peaceful world like Lyria? His people were known for their biology research, not fighting. The closest Lyrian ship was at least 3 weeks away. He curled his 6-fingered hands around his knees and closed his lower set of eyes, keeping the upper pair open to watch the door. Maybe he should just give the Vorlax what they wanted. Maybe then they would let him go home. "No," he whispered fiercely. "The truth matters." His research proved that the planets the Vorlax wanted to mine contained special microbes that would die if disturbed. According to galactic law, this meant the planets needed protection. But protection meant no mining, and no mining meant no profit for the Vorlax. 3 levels up from Zixal's hiding place, Lieutenant Olivia Martinez floated in 0 gravity next to the Star Leaper's main communication dish. The sleek Earth ship was docked at Harmony 7 for resupply. Olivia's dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun under her work helmet. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she carefully replaced burned-out circuits. "Almost done, Control," she reported through her headset. 2 more modules to go. As she reached for another circuit board, a strange signal crackled through her earpiece. At first she thought it was just static, but then a clear voice came through. Desperate, afraid, and definitely not human. Olivia froze, her tools floating beside her. The message repeated once more before fading into static again. Earth Alliance rules were clear. All distress signals had to be reported to commanding officers immediately. But something about this message felt different. The fear in that voice. It reminded her of her younger brother when neighborhood bullies would corner him after school. She glanced toward the station through the transparent repair bay doors. The Vorlax were one of the oldest, most powerful species in the galaxy. Their massive ships could be seen even from here, decorated with the gold and black symbols of their trading empire. Everyone knew not to cross them. Meanwhile, humans were still the new kids in space. Earth had only figured out faster than light travel 30 years ago. Most alien species still treated humans like children who had wandered into an adults-only party, tolerated but not respected. Olivia bit her lip, thinking. The alien, Zixal, had sounded truly terrified, and something about standing up to bullies was deeply wired into human nature, no matter how big those bullies might be. She tapped her communicator and switched to a private channel. "Captain Miller," she said. "Decision made. There's something you need to hear." Captain Frank Miller was not having a good day. He stared out the viewport of his small office aboard the Star Leaper, watching alien ships come and go from the massive space station. The blue-green rings of Harmony 7 spun slowly, housing representatives from over 200 different species, and somehow humans were still at the bottom of the list. 3 hours, he muttered, checking his tablet again. 3 hours waiting for a 5-minute meeting with the Trade Council, only to be told Earth's proposal needs further review. He ran a hand through his short gray hair and sighed. 20 years in the Earth Alliance Navy, and he was still being treated like a child asking for a seat at the grown-ups table. When his communicator buzzed, Miller almost ignored it. But duty won out. "This is the captain," he answered shortly. "Sir," Olivia's voice came through, sounding unusually serious. "I picked up a distress call while working on the comm array. I think you should listen to it." Miller frowned. "Forward it to my office." A moment later, the alien's frightened voice filled the room. Miller listened carefully, his frown deepening with each word. "And you're sure this wasn't meant for anyone specific?" he asked when the recording finished. "Yes, sir," Olivia replied. "It was broadcast on an emergency channel, but using a modified signal that makes it hard to track. I only caught it because I was working directly on our receiver dish." Miller walked to his window again, looking toward the massive Vorlak ship, docked at the station's main hub. It was 5 times the size of the Starleaper, covered in weapons that could reduce Earth's best ship to dust in seconds. "Lieutenant, this is not our problem," he said firmly. "The Vorlaks control half the trade routes between Earth and the rest of the galaxy. We can't afford to make enemies of them over some alien scientist's claims." "But sir," Olivia insisted, "if he's telling the truth, even if he is," Miller cut her off, "it's an internal council matter. We're guests here, Martinez. Remember that." "Yes, sir," she replied, but her voice made it clear she disagreed. Miller ended the call and sat heavily in his chair. The smart move was to ignore the message. File a report later, after they were safely back in Earth space. That's what any other species would do. But then again, humans had never been very good at looking the other way. His door chimed, interrupting his thoughts. "Enter," Miller called. The door slid open to reveal Gregory Nash, the Starleaper's chief science officer. Nash was tall and lean, with deep brown skin and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He stepped into the office without invitation and placed a datapad on Miller's desk. "Martinez sent me the recording," Nash said without preamble. "The alien is a Lyrian named Zixal. He's been working on a major research project studying microbes on disputed planets." Miller raised an eyebrow. "And you know this how?" "I read his papers." Nash shrugged. "The Lyrians are brilliant biologists. Zixal discovered microbes that are extremely sensitive to mining activities. Exactly the kind of mining the Vorlaks want to do in those systems. So if those microbes are officially recognized as threatened life forms, the Vorlaks would have to use expensive protection methods to mine there. It would cut their profits by billions." Nash crossed his arms. "The Vorlaks have a history of making problems disappear, sir." Miller stood up, annoyed now. "What exactly are you suggesting, Nash? That we risk an interstellar incident for an alien we've never met, based on a distress call we can't even verify?" "I'm suggesting," Nash replied calmly, "that maybe this is why humanity is here. Maybe we're supposed to be different." "Different gets you killed in space," Miller snapped. "Sir?" came Olivia's voice again from the doorway. She had arrived silently and now stood at attention. "Permission to speak freely?" Miller nodded reluctantly. "My grandfather was a history professor," she said. "He taught me that throughout human history, progress only happened when someone stood up for what was right, even when it was dangerous, especially when it was dangerous." She met Miller's eyes. "If we ignore this, what was the point of coming to the stars at all?" The room fell silent. Miller looked between his 2 officers, then back at the Vorlak ship visible through the viewport. Everything logical told him to stay out of it. Everything human told him he couldn't. "Fine," he finally said, "but we do this carefully. Martinez, find this Lyrian. Nash, verify his claims before we stick our necks out. And both of you remember, if this goes wrong, we're not just risking ourselves. We're risking Earth." Olivia nodded, relief clear on her face. "Yes, sir. I'll find him." As his officers left to begin their mission, Frank Miller turned back to the viewport. The enormous Vorlak ship loomed like a predator, beautiful and deadly. He had the distinct feeling he had just made either the best or worst decision of his career. Only time would tell which. 4 hours later, Zixal nearly screamed when his modified communicator vibrated with an incoming message. The text was in Formal Galactic Standard, Zixal of Lyria. "We received your call. Meet maintenance shaft 47B at station rotation cycle change. Come alone. Look for the red light. The message was unsigned, but included an encrypted verification code used by species outside the Council inner circle. Zixal's third heart fluttered with hope. Someone had actually answered. Maintenance shaft 47B was located in the lower levels of Harmony 7, where the station's enormous waste recycling systems hummed constantly. The sound provided excellent cover for conversations that needed to remain private. Zixal arrived early, his four eyes darting nervously in different directions, searching for any sign of Vorlak spies. When the overhead lights dimmed slightly, indicating the station's rotation cycle change, Zixal felt every muscle in his body tense. A small red light blinked 3 times from deeper in the corridor. Taking a deep breath of the station's processed air, Zixal moved forward. What he saw waiting for him made him stop in confusion. 3 beings stood in the shadows. Their forms were unmistakable, bipedal with only 2 eyes and no protective exoskeleton. Humans, the least influential species in the Galactic Council, had answered his desperate plea. Dr. Zixal? The female human stepped forward, her voice soft. I'm Lieutenant Olivia Martinez. This is Captain Miller and Dr. Jackson from the Earth Alliance vessel Starleaper. Zixal's translator implant converted her words perfectly, but he still struggled to understand. You're humans. Why would you help me? The taller male, Captain Miller, gave what Zixal recognized as a human shrug. Let's just say we have a complicated relationship with bullies. The darker-skinned human, Dr. Jackson, moved closer, his eyes bright with scientific curiosity. Your research on microbial ecosystems in the terrace sector is brilliant. I've read what's been published. The implications for terraforming technology alone. Zixal felt his antennae perk up in surprise. You've read my work? The Galactic Academy barely acknowledged it. Earth scientists tend to read everything, Jackson replied with a smile. Being newcomers means we can't afford to overlook good research, regardless of who produces it. Olivia interrupted gently. Dr. Zixal, we need to understand exactly what's happening. What do the Vorlax want you to falsify, and why? For the next 30 minutes, Zixal explained his predicament. His team had discovered that several planets in disputed territories contained microbial life uniquely sensitive to the mining techniques employed by Vorlak corporations. Under galactic law, such findings would require expensive protective measures, cutting deeply into Vorlak profits. When my preliminary findings were submitted to the Council Science Directorate, 3 Vorlak assistants were assigned to my team, Zixal explained. At first, they just suggested alternate interpretations of the data. Then they began altering our samples. When I objected, his voice faltered. 2 days ago, my research partner disappeared. The message was clear. Captain Miller's expression hardened. Do you have proof of the original findings and the tampering? Zixal hesitated, then reached into a hidden pocket in his environment suit. He extracted a data crystal glowing with stored information. Everything is here, but it doesn't matter. No one will challenge the Vorlax, especially not for a Lyrian scientist. Dr. Jackson took the crystal with reverent care. The Earth Alliance will. What? Zixal and Captain Miller spoke simultaneously. Captain, Jackson continued with growing excitement. This is exactly the opportunity Earth has been waiting for. If we present this evidence to the full council, with Dr. Zixal under our protection, the Vorlax would retaliate immediately, Miller argued. Olivia's eyes lit up as she caught on to Jackson's thinking. Not if we time it right. The council plenary session is tomorrow. Every member civilization will be present. The Vorlax wouldn't dare move against us with so many witnesses. Captain Miller looked unconvinced. And what about after the session? We'd be painting targets on our backs and on Earth. Unless, Dr. Jackson said slowly, we had allies. Civilizations that also chafe under Vorlak economic domination, but have been too cautious to speak up alone. Zixal watched this exchange with growing amazement. These humans weren't just helping him. They were formulating a plan to challenge one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. It was either incredibly brave or utterly foolish. Perhaps both. You would risk so much? For my research? For me? Zixal asked. Olivia placed a gentle hand on Zixal's shoulder, a gesture his cultural training identified as one of human reassurance. Sometimes standing up to bullies is worth the risk, Dr. Zixal. Now let's get you somewhere safe while we prepare. As Aang. They escorted him through the station's maintenance corridors toward the Starleaper. Zixal felt something he hadn't experienced since the Vorlax first threatened him. Hope. The Galactic Council chamber was an architectural marvel, designed to accommodate representatives from over 200 spacefaring civilizations. Curved tiers of seating surrounded a central speaking platform, with environmental controls allowing species from methane breathers to silicon-based lifeforms to participate comfortably. Captain Miller straightened his formal Earth Alliance uniform as he took his place in the lower tier, the section reserved for newer council members. Beside him, Dr. Jackson fidgeted nervously with the datapad containing Zixal's research. In the visitors' gallery, Lieutenant Martinez sat protectively next to Zixal, who was almost vibrating with anxiety. The Vorlac delegation occupied a prominent position in the upper tiers. Ambassador Krenvos, an imposing figure with iridescent scales and multiple sensory appendages, surveyed the chamber with an air of bored superiority. When his compound eyes briefly landed on the human delegation, they narrowed almost imperceptibly, before moving on. He knows something's up, Miller muttered. Jackson nodded. Let's hope our friends come through. Over the past 12 hours, the crew of the Starleaper had worked feverishly. While Olivia had secured Zixal aboard their ship, Jackson and his science team had verified and organized the Lyrian's research data. Meanwhile, Miller had called in every favor, exploited every connection, and made several new promises to gather support among the Council's mid-tier civilizations. The Council chairman, a gelatinous entity from the Melosian collective, pulsed, with official colors as the session began. This plenary session of the 4th and 927th cycle is now in session. Before we address the scheduled agenda, the chair recognizes the representative from Earth. A surprised murmur rippled through the chamber. Earth rarely requested early speaking privileges. Miller stood and walked confidently to the central platform, despite the knot in his stomach. Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Council, I come before you today with grave concerns regarding the integrity of our shared scientific processes. The chamber fell silent as Miller outlined Zixal's findings about the microbial ecosystems and the subsequent intimidation campaign. Dr. Jackson transmitted supporting data to the Council's shared information network as Miller spoke. These allegations are absurd, Ambassador Krenvos interrupted, his translator conveying perfectly calibrated outrage. The human delegation is clearly attempting to undermine Vorlac standing for their own benefit. Where is this supposed scientist? Where is the evidence beyond tampered data files? Miller smiled thinly. Dr. Zixal is present and prepared to testify. He gestured to the gallery where Olivia sat with the Lyrian scientist. Before Krenvos could object further, another voice spoke. The chair recognizes the delegation from the Pelleran Republic. Ambassador Neri of the Pellerans, a civilization known for their extensive trading networks that competed with Vorlac interests, rose from her seat. We have independently verified the methodology of Dr. Zixal's research and find it scientifically sound. The Pelleran Republic requests a formal investigation. The Cantorian Alliance seconds this request, called another representative. As does the Juxtan Confederation, added a third. One by one, 11 civilizations, all of whom had communicated with Miller overnight, voiced their support. None were powerful enough to challenge the Vorlax alone, but together, with Earth leading, the coalition, Krenvos's scales flushed with anger patterns. This is a coordinated attack on Vorlax sovereignty. These disputed territories are subject to Council environmental protection laws, regardless of who claims them politically, Miller interrupted. Laws that all members, including the Vorlac Imperium, have sworn to uphold, the Council chairman pulsed contemplatively. The evidence presented is concerning. This council will commission an independent scientific expedition to verify Dr. Zixal's findings. And what of the intimidation? The disappeared research partner? Miller pressed. These are serious accusations that must be investigated separately, the chairman replied. Until such investigation is complete, Dr. Zixal and his research will be placed under council protection. Krenvos hissed something in the Vorlak language that the translator didn't catch, or perhaps diplomatically chose not to translate. With a sharp gesture to his aides, the ambassador stormed from the chamber. As the session continued with scheduled business, Miller returned to his seat, exchanging a relieved glance with Jackson before looking up at Olivia and Zixal in the gallery. The Lyrian scientists' antennae were standing straight up in an expression of shock and relief. This battle was won, but Miller harbored no illusions. The Vorlaks had long memories and extensive resources. Earth had just made a powerful enemy, but perhaps they had made even more valuable friends. 3 weeks after the dramatic council session, Lieutenant Olivia Martinez stood in the observation lounge of the Starleaper, watching stars streak by as the ship traveled through hyperspace toward Earth. Behind her, Zixal studied the display with undisguised fascination. "I've never seen a propulsion system modulate the hyperfield quite like this," the Lyrian commented. "The efficiency ratio must be remarkable." Olivia smiled. "Our engineers would be happy to discuss it with you. They're still making adjustments. This technology is relatively new for us." This was an understatement. Humanity had rapidly adapted and improved upon the hyperspace technology they'd been granted upon joining the Galactic Council. Where other species might take centuries to fully integrate new technological concepts, humans had shown an uncanny ability to experiment, modify, and sometimes improve upon alien tech within decades. The door to the lounge slid open as Captain Miller and Dr. Jackson entered, both looking pleased. "Good news," Miller announced. "The Council's independent expedition has confirmed your findings, Dr. Zixal. The microbial ecosystems in all 7 disputed systems will receive Category 1 protection status." Zixal's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, his species equivalent of emotional tears. "And my research partner?" Jackson smiled broadly. "Even better news on that front, she's alive. The Vorlaks had transferred her to a research station in their home system, but with council pressure they've agreed to release her. She'll meet us at Earth." "The Vorlaks agreed?" Olivia asked skeptically. "Not willingly," Miller admitted. "But our little coalition has grown. 17 civilizations now form what the Council news networks are calling the Environmental Protection Alliance. Together, we represent enough economic and political power that the Vorlaks can't simply ignore us." "And what of my people?" Zixal asked quietly. "The Lyrian consensus is grateful, but they lack the resources to protect me if I return home." Captain Miller and Dr. Jackson exchanged meaningful glances. "Well," Jackson began, "that's actually something we wanted to discuss with you. Earth Xenobiology Department at the Global Science Academy has reviewed your complete research portfolio. They were impressed would be an understatement. They've extended an offer," Miller continued. "A permanent research position with your own lab and a team of both human and alien scientists. Your work on microbial ecosystems could revolutionize our terraforming approaches." Zixal's antennae quivered with surprise. "You would welcome a non-human into such an important position?" Olivia laughed. "Dr. Zixal, if there's one thing humans value, it's someone who stands up for the truth regardless of the consequences. Besides, after everything that's happened, I think you'll find you have quite a few fans on Earth." The tension visibly drained from Zixal's slender form. For the first time since they'd met him, the Lyrian scientist seemed to stand taller, his natural bioluminescence glowing slightly brighter. "I had heard stories about humans," he said thoughtfully. "That your species acts on emotion rather than logic. That you form alliances based on abstract principles rather than calculated advantage. Many in the Council consider these traits primitive weaknesses. And what do you think?" Miller asked. Zixal turned to look out at the stars streaking past. "I think that when I called for help, expecting no answer, only humans responded. I think that when faced with a vastly more powerful adversary, You chose to stand and fight rather than look away, and I think—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "I think the galaxy may have misjudged your species." Dr. Jackson chuckled. "That happens a lot." "So," Olivia asked, "will you accept the position?" Zixal performed the formal Lyrian gesture of acceptance, a complex motion involving all four of his arms that looked almost like a dance. "It would be my honor. Perhaps I can help my people understand yours better. We have much to learn from each other." As the Starleaper continued its journey to Earth, carrying its unexpected alien passenger toward a new life, news of the Vorlak confrontation spread throughout the galaxy. Many Council species dismissed it as human recklessness that had merely succeeded through luck. Others watched more carefully, reassessing their understanding of the galaxy's youngest spacefaring civilization. What none could deny was that something had changed in the delicate balance of galactic politics. A line had been drawn, not by the powerful but by those who refused to be bullied any longer. And at the center of this quiet revolution stood humanity, still newcomers to the stars, who had answered a desperate call that everyone else had ignored. For Zixal, staring out at the hyperspace corridor carrying him toward Earth, one thing was certain: the universe had suddenly become much more interesting and